Way, hello, welcome back to Relove Guitars workshop. I'm Sam, and this is the place where I take budget guitars and some not so budget guitars these days, but began as budget guitars and with a mission to do a few basic setup things to them and make them play better than they have any right to play and as good as they can. And it's been nearly a year since I started doing it, and I had a very pleasing thing the other day where somebody contacted me and said something like they hadn't heard of me before, or hadn't come across me before, but a student or a guitar student had come to their guitar lesson and brought Reloved 004, so the fourth guitar I ever put a serial number on, and actually the first one I sold, and that was a red Encore Strat, which I remember how satisfied it felt to make it play really well, and I think it was a really inexpensive guitar. I think I remember paying something like 20 quid for it locally, but made it play really well and sold it to a guy down in Cornwall. And I don't know whether it was him that went to the guitar lesson, but either way it's really nice to know that the guitar is still out there being used. And the guitar teacher contacted me because he was really impressed by the playability of the guitar, because as a guitar teacher, of course, he spends an awful lot of his time telling people to go and get their guitars set up by his guitar tech or somebody, because they're usually unplayable, which is the sort of standard condition. So anyway, that's a good example of what I've been doing and learning to do over the year, and not knowing all the answers along the way all the time, and being open to learn it as I go. So and that's what's really been so enjoyable about it. Camera's wobbling a bit because I got it balanced up here on the pillar drill, yeah, so anytime I move in the shed it wobbles. But anyway, so today's video, after nearly a year of doing this stuff, today's video is going to be a setup of this very pretty looking Fender Stratocaster Mexican, which Malcolm has given to me to do a setup, bit of a fret level check and setup, clean up and set up for him, and he's acquired this guitar from his son, who has kind of moved on to playing Ibanez and Gibson SG Junior, I think his main guitars. So Malcolm, as a dad, only a dad can do, twisted his arm and got this one out of him at a good price. So lovely looking sort of matte, metallic-y matte paint job on it. Has a 6-screw tremolo. Looks like it's set up, not quite sure how well it's set up, but anyway it is set up, so I will reset it at the end to play again. This guitar has what does it have? No, what I don't have is I don't have any strings for this guitar yet. They're on order. So what I can do is I was going to do the work next weekend, but I've got a busy weekend lined up next weekend. So I'm going to get the neck work on this done today, and then I'll be a little bit ahead of the game for next weekend. So what do I see about this? I've only worked on one Mexican Strat before, and that was quite a lot older and more heavily played than this one, so this is really good condition. Plays nicely anyway, this one, just as it is. It's got quite fine frets. It has a little bit of fret wear actually down here, so a little fret dress will be really nice and take care of that. And then I'll do the usual of checking the height of the first fret and leveling the frets, and I'm going to move that thing so I don't knock guitars against it. Yes, so that's what's lined up for this guitar, and all over clean because the fingerboard at the moment is really filthy. And interesting, there's a bit of a conversation going on YouTube with somebody about not putting oil onto guitar necks and or onto fingerboards. And actually, you know, I totally get that that argument. I'm sort of largely aligned with Scott Grove, who completely against putting anything on guitar necks. And the truth is, I don't really want to do it either. The reason I do put some oil on the guitar neck after I've done it is because cleaning it of all this gunk with something like Naphtha does sort of dry it out, and it would look pretty horrible to give it back with a sort of dried out grey sheen to it. Of course, if I did this with warm water and a toothbrush, then it wouldn't dry out quite as much, but it still would end up looking a bit dried out. So for me, the oil is just a way of just kind of taking that dried out look away. And it's not something I would put on the guitar again beyond that point. So I put some on to make it look nice. It really is cosmetic. The fellow's argument on YouTube was, you know, why take all the gunk off it only to put more gunk attracting oil back on it? And he's absolutely right. You know, you do. If you've watched the videos I've done before, you'll probably see me making a point of wiping off most of the excess oil, or all the excess oil, just only enough to change the colour of the fingerboard. But you know, in answer to that, really is the reason I take the gunge off the fingerboard. You know, the argument might be why take it off if you're going to put some back on? Well, I take this off because it's somebody else's DNA and grease, and I would prefer to have a cleaned fingerboard, even if it had a bit of oil chucked on it, even though oil isn't fantastically good for wood. But I'd rather it was clean and had that feeling that all these parts had been kind of not sterilised, but, you know, given a freshen up, so that it wasn't, you know, somebody's toe jam and, you know, bogies and snot and dead skin. And sorry, but, you know, that's what builds up on guitars, in particularly when they live in young adolescent men's bedrooms and stuff. So no, I'm not saying this Adam would build up dirt on his guitar that way, but, you know, teenagers and guitars and bedrooms, and, you know, they get filthy. So the only reason I take that gunk off is just to make it a little bit nicer for somebody who's going to buy it again. But in doing so, it does look a bit dried out, so hence the oil. Anyway, clear up that point. So we'll do the same with that one. What I also have over here, just a point of interest, is a great big this thing, Antoria Rockstar, which I refretted because it was in completely worn out condition. So I'm part of the way along here. I've restrung it, and the action's all wrong down this end at the moment because it's all got new frets on and everything's different. But I've just put it on hold because it's not urgent. This is a do up and sell one. I've done some sort of repairs to some big dents on the headstock. But generally speaking, it's a lovely guitar, and I got the neck done. Took long enough doing that, but got it back together again. I was just testing it out, and then it just the strands of wire holding the jack plug input must have broken at that point, and so I had to do that thing of pulling all the electrics out through the F-hole to repair that, resolder that, and it's such a pain in the backside. And you've got to attach some safety wires to the tops of all your pots and your jack plug input, because you've got to be able to pull them back through the hole they came out of, and there's no way you're going to get your finger in there to push them into place, so you have to pull them out. So you need to attach something to the top of the pot, let it pull through and let the wire go through with it, and then when you're ready you pull it all back through and try and rearrange it, which is really it's not a job you'd really want to do, and I've heard tell that guitar techs in guitar shops hate that job more than anything else in the world, and I can really understand it. Just some of the comments of the people on my Facebook page when I said I was doing it kind of gives that away. They go, God no, rather you than me. Okay, so to get stuck into this, I'm not quite sure how this is going to work. I don't want this to fall off here, so I'm trying my best. I think it should be an alright view. We're running? Yeah, we're running. Okay, so fairly nothing. There's nothing I can observe about this that stands out. What actually, I'll tell you what does surprise me is how feeble the little tremolo block is for a Fender. I know it's Mexican made and all that, but it is really feeble. You'd expect something much better quality than that. So just going to do a quick check of what the playing action is like at this end of the guitar, and so it's currently 1.6 millimeters. It's quite a nice low action, and I don't think we'll aim for much lower than that. I don't think that's really the point. I wouldn't be comfortable going much lower than that. But what I want to do is just have a quick check of, even in the lying flat position, I just want to check what reading I've got on the first fret action, and see is it consistent all the way across. It's fairly consistent. There's a little bit higher on the B and the E. It's going to be quite low, so I think it played really well when I played it this morning, so I don't think we'll have an awful lot to do on here, and I don't really want to go much lower than 0.3, which it is. Yeah, it's just under 0.3, so it's already, well, in this position it is, so it's probably like 0.35 I'm playing. So 0.25 lying down, and then if you won't be able to see this, sorry, if we put it up here we expect it to increase. But yeah, it's already in quite good shape, so we won't have much work to do there at all, which is fine. So I'm going to take off the strings, and we'll I'll keep them, try and keep them just in case we need to put them on. It's useful to keep strings if you're going to recut the nut slots. It's very useful to keep your old strings if they're in reasonable shape, because you can use them to put back on the guitar and do things like check the neck relief and then adjust the playing action at both ends using the old strings rather than stressing out a new set of strings, which you sort of want to keep for playing best, really. So each of these videos I kind of try to explain what I'm doing as if you hadn't watched any other videos, which you may not have done, so I'm not going to assume anything. So here at the Really Love Guitars workshop, the kind of standard thing for me is to pretty much, well, in fact almost always do a fret level, or some people call it fret dress. I call it leveling the frets, because that's the kind of focus of it for me, really. So I make a leveling of the frets, kind of the core of every setup that I do. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this back plate off first. And the reason for that is mainly because the levelness or the evenness of your frets kind of sets what's possible with your playing action. And it's been my experience over the last year or so of doing this that pretty much all guitars that I come across, the playing action is kind of limited, I suppose is a way of putting it. Yeah, limited by the evenness or unevenness of the frets, and what that means is, coming from another angle, just about all guitars have uneven frets as sort of standard, just due to the nature of the way frets get put into the neck. It's kind of impossible in the fitting stage to make them precisely level. So just in the installation of frets you get default unevenness, and that unevenness often doesn't show up until the playing action gets lower. So above a certain height the unevenness of the frets doesn't doesn't cause any particular problems. When you get the action lower, then one fret being higher than the others will show up as a sort of either a buzzing or a choking of a note, because the frets, so the string's hitting the high fret when it shouldn't be, or hitting a series of high frets when it shouldn't be. So consequently, most guitars that you buy in the shop or online or from somebody will have the action set as low as it can possibly go without hitting its sort of limitations. So people will take the action right down until it starts buzzing, and then they'll back it off a bit higher than that, so it's playable. I'm just thinking about this. This is a Tangle, and I'm not going to be doing anything with the restringing until next week, so I'm going to cut these off because I've got plenty of spare sets right now, and what I don't want is to be trying forever to untangle them. So you can come out there and you can come out there. But if you haven't got any spares, as I do, you might want to take the time to pull those out in one piece, but it takes a bit of untangling time. Yeah, so the issue with frets is that pretty much every guitar you'll come across has somebody at some time, the owner will have lowered the action as far as they can go with the bridge saddle, and then they'll stop as the buzzes start to show up and just raise the action a little bit. Now, interestingly, when people think about playing action, most of the time I certainly did before I kind of spent more time working it out, initially I thought playing action was just how high you set the bridge saddles. What I never really paid much attention to was this part of the playing action, and this part is actually probably more important than that part in terms of how easy or difficult the guitar is to play. It makes such an enormous difference that you can take this is quite a good guitar, but you can take a really crappy bog standard budget Strat or something like this. It could be even, I don't know, Cruiser or a I can't think of the Encores, anything. You can take a really budget Strat, and if you get this bit right, if the only thing you did was set the height of the strings over the first fret correctly, i.e. cut the nut slots correctly, you transform the way the guitar plays, even if you weren't able to adjust the action down here. Because actually the action down here is progressive. You only really start to feel it when you're halfway up and around about 12th fret and beyond. The action down here is what really tires you out and makes the biggest impression. So I didn't know that. I always thought it was all about here, but we're going to take care of both of those and get it exactly right so that the action is as low as it can be. But as I was coming full circle, the whole point of doing the fret leveling, as I do, is to ensure that the frets are as level as they can be within reason, without going and buying a £100,000 computer aided machine to do it, within reason, to make sure the frets are as level as they can be, so that you have more choice over how low you set the action. You're not dictated to by the inherent defects in the kind of construction of the guitar. And actually sometimes it doesn't make, in this case with this guitar, it's not going to make a huge difference to the action because it's already playing at 1.6. What Malcolm noticed is that at that sort of action, which he likes to play at, there were one or two frets buzzing or slightly high. So we'll take care of that, and what Malcolm will get out of this whole process will be a more precise playing experience. That won't change much because it's pretty close, and basically it'll just be mostly on this job now, mostly the frets will take care of, and it will also, in dressing them or leveling them, we'll also take out some of the dents and scratches that are in the frets after a couple of years of playing, or however long this guitar's played. So I kind of pay an additional bonus of doing the fret leveling is that you rejuvenate the frets themselves. Also, I'm just looking at this. This is quite caked in gunge, so I'm going to do a couple of runs over this You can, if you want, you can get a little bit toothbrushy and get a little bit of a scrub going up. Actually, it doesn't. Toothbrush is quite a light, gentle device, but you can put a bit more muscle into it if you want. But it's quite safe. Interestingly, one of the things that the chap online was saying about oil is that you don't want to get oil into the fret slots, because surely oil will eventually start to lubricate your frets and help them to lift off. And that's the thing. I can't really give a ruling one way or another on that, because I've not really seen that happen. But I think in principle it kind of makes sense to assume that oil and frets sitting in slots probably don't mix brilliantly well. But there are lots of other things, kind of common sense things that start to come out about guitars when you start to really think about them. So by the same token, I agree that oil and frets probably aren't a good mixture. It also follows that some people's preferred method of leveling high frets, i.e. tapping them with a hammer or some device, or a fret hammer if you've got one, to me doesn't seem like a really good idea either, because logic, sort of construction, building common sense tells me if you've got frets, hard metal, sitting in a trench of soft wood, possibly with some glue set around it, the last thing I want to be doing with that is banging it, giving it a sharp impact with a hammer, because that's going to, at best, it's going to kind of cause a recoil of the fret, which is going to gouge the wood deeper, which is going to loosen the grip on the fret far more, if you ask me, or likely to, than putting a bit of oil across the fingerboard. But anyway, it's just one of those things that people seem to do that I can't quite get my head around. Okay, it's starting to look nice and clean. This was a fairly light rosewood before we began, so it hasn't really hasn't changed the way it looks too much doing this, but sometimes on a darker rosewood this can look very, very milky and dry by the time we've finished this. There's been some discussion as well on the YouTube channel about this stuff Naphtha and what it is and isn't good for, and I am not by any means a chemist. What I've been told, and by as many authoritative sources as I've been able to find, is that Naphtha is safe to use on guitar finishes, whether it's polyurethane finishes or nitrocellulose, and my experience of that so far is that's been the case. It doesn't seem to do any damage at all to a finish. But what I have found, because again, this is, some people will dispute this, so I don't want to get into an argument about what it is or isn't, but some people know Naphtha as paint strippers, and some people know it as just lighter fluid. Some people know it as white spirits in some countries. There's a whole set of descriptions for this stuff, and the issue about Naphtha is that it is a sort of group, a generic group of substances which all seem to share a petroleum base. It's quite dusty, so I just need another cloth. My little, or what research I've been able to do, suggests that the nearest technical term you'd find for what it actually is petroleum ether. But it's commonly, people commonly know it because you can buy it. The nearest thing or common thing that people who do guitars will buy is something like Swan. Is it Swan? Yeah, Zippo lighter fluid or Swan lighter fluid. So it's a flammable liquid. but it's petroleum base. But it does actually thin some paints, not guitar finishes, but some of the finishes on, for example, the knobs and those fixtures. I found myself rubbing some of the tone words off a guitar not too long ago. Just a completely unexpected effect, but it's, somebody who's a professional luthier would have a field day and go, you should know this, you shouldn't be let loose with Naphtha unless you knew exactly blah 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 blah. But the interesting thing is, if you're, and I'm sure many of you have, if you've started doing this stuff as a kind of enthusiast because you play guitar and you want to do your own setup, you'll struggle to find any definitive answer to these things. So it isn't actually that possible to have a single view, or to be right, or to get it right, such that you don't get. Does Malcolm really want that on there? It's very, very difficult to go and find a definitive answer to avoid being accused of having the wrong answer, which is a pain. So you go and try and research and find out whether or not Naphtha has any effect on the paint on vintage volume knobs. I wish you luck in your search, because it's practically impossible to find anything that relates to that, and certainly was when I was looking. So it's very, very difficult, like a lot of things guitar related, incredibly hard to somebody's worn those out, hard to find these definitive answers. And yet, as soon as you're in the guitar world, it seems to be very, very open to kind of accusations of, or an expectation that you should know the answer to all of these things. I find it quite amazing that I can go onto Google and look for a definitive answer from those in the know about guitar finishes and guitar repair, luthiering and all that stuff. I would expect to be able to quickly find a definitive answer as to what Naphtha is and exactly what it's safe with and what it isn't safe with. And can I find a definitive answer that's research based or evidence based? Nope. And nor will you be able to. You'll find thousands of opinions, all of which change on every single different page you look at, and everybody who has an opinion thinks they're right about it, and anyone who doesn't share that opinion is an asshole and deserves to be insulted, and so on and so on. So it's incredible. It's not just the internet, it's the internet plus guitars seems to breed that kind of thing, and it's just very, very strange. Anyway, so Naphtha. This was sold online on eBay in a big 5-litre jug as Naphtha. It called itself Naphtha, and that's what it's done. I tried to buy it again since, and the company that sold it no longer sells it. I don't know if it's because of regulations about storing and transporting. It may well be, but the search for an alternative was equally interesting, and it took me long enough to find out that petroleum ether was a viable alternative. But again, if you're risking your finish on it, there's nobody there going to give you a clean promise or a clean bill of health on this. You've just got to suck it and see. Obviously, you'll try it out on a piece of not important stuff. You won't do it on a client's guitar, but it's precious few definitive answers, which I find is really odd. One thing I've noticed about this is quite remarkable. Whilst this tremolo block is a pretty wimpy block, these little fellas are incredibly tightly fitted, unusually tightly fitted. Never had to spend so long removing them. I'll probably speed up now. I've loosened them with a power one, but they're also not in the greatest condition, so I have to put a bit of quite a bit of downward force on it to make it work. Sorry about the noise. So I'm just taking these off because part of what I like to do is to clean these all these saddles up. You know, that's goes back to that thing I was saying about why not make a guitar, freshen it up so that somebody feels like they're getting something a little bit sparkly. Either, you know, when they're buying it from you or when they're getting it back from you. So, usual gunge comes out. But this is quite remarkable. That is the cheapest, thinnest, nastiest, lowest quality soft alloy, or soft cast steel or cast iron or whatever the hell it is. But you know, it's a crumbly, lightweight alloy. It's not a quality steel. Which is kind of amazing. That's a Fender, and it is. I've got one over here, and it is no chunkier than one that you'd pull off an Encore Strat or something like that. I can't quite find it right this second, but I promise you there is one there, and it's as flimsy as that one. Oh, I know, here it's in here. Yeah. In fact, the Encore one is slightly more substantial, has a bit more weight in it than the Fender Mexico. So that's really naff. I've got a vintage Strat, as in the brand, by John Hornby Skews, which is quite a lot less in price than this, and the block is solid steel, big milled steel lump. There you go. And also on my Japanese Squier, oh look, here's another one. On my Japanese Squier, it also has a solid steel. And that was a 1982 built Squier, made of American parts in Japan, but you know, a better sustaining block. So I would suggest to Malcolm that he replaces that one with, I don't know, even a Wilkinson piece, something like that. It would do. But there's an Encore one, and you can see it's so soft. I don't know if you can see it very well, but the tremolo arm cuts its own thread in the metal, and it eventually splits, and it's broken away, and it's crumbled away. But you know, that's exactly the same material as this. It's really, really cheap. Which is, I don't know, it just seems to me a bit of. I mean, we all know that the Fender Mexico Fenders are, you know, a lower quality than the US or even Japanese ones, but you know, do they really have to go that cheap with the components? It seems to me that if you go that cheap with the components, what is the difference really? I mean, where is the difference between this and an Encore? Okay, so I'm just going to take off the neck. Interestingly, the screws are moving on a setting of 3. I'm just going to try on 2. They're coming off with 3 or 4, which is quite lightly fixed. That, by the way, is not a very scientific measure. It's just a kind of rule of thumb type of thing. I can see what how tightly these are done up by the torque setting I need to undo it. Okay, so I'm just going to take the screws out first, and this thing's still got plastic caught in it, protective plastic, and then I'm going to take the neck off, but I'm going to be careful really of two main things. First of all, I'll turn it all around in one piece if I can. The first thing I'm going to watch out for is not to waggle it from side to side, because you can very easily crack little bits of lacquer off the side if you waggle it. And the other thing is, as you're taking it off, always do it in a place where the neck is supported or the body is supported, because you need to look out for whether or not there are any shims in this pocket. Okay, so I'm just checking all over, make sure no little bits of sandpaper or anything, because sometimes you'll find in the pocket there'll be a shim put in there to raise the neck angle slightly, just to correct it. It's a sort of last minute thing to get the angle set exactly as the quality control inspector wants it, and then it goes out the factory. In this case there are none, so the neck geometry must be good. It's a nicely machined, routed thing here. But yeah, good stuff. Nice thick body. Can't remember what the wood is on these, but it played nicely this morning. It was nice, but it wasn't completely, didn't stand out a mile. I played more. In fact, the vintage modified Strat that I've got at the moment sounds a bit strattier than even this did. And now there's just a little thing here I've noticed. The string tree is right down on the deck, which means the angle of the strings coming over the B and the E are really, really extreme. I've never seen one of these right down at that angle, so I'm going to put a little spacer under there, because I think these should be not quite as extreme an angle as that. I could be wrong, and it's easy enough to remove it if I am, but I think it feels to me like somebody's lost the little barrel that sits under there. Again, just a hunch, it won't do any harm. Been screwed in really tight, so much it's made a dent. Not sure why. Now I'm just going to have a quick look at this neck as it stands here, and typically I keep finding, obviously if you're looking to ascertain whether a neck is straight or otherwise, you've got to bear in mind that the neck is always under the impact of, or the influence of gravity. So, and a wooden neck is a flexible thing, even with a piece of steel in it. So, if you hold it like that, it's bending that way. If you want to get rid of the effects of gravity as much as possible, you could hold it downwards and look down it. That's one way, and that will remove some of the effects of gravity, because it's all pulling down. Or sometimes I just hold it on the side like this and look down it, and I'm just eyeballing it. Some people get really het up about doing this with straight edges. You can do it, there's nothing wrong with it. You can get slotted straight edges, so you can put them over the frets and see. But I like to look with my eyes, and I can see the curvature. And the purpose of this is, in order to do the fret leveling, I'm going to need to put this neck in as flat a position as possible. And when I then work on it, I've got to remember that I don't want to press down on it too hard, because I'll change the curvature in the neck and so on. So it's, it is ideally if you could do all your fret leveling up on the side, and you can buy jigs that allow you to do that, and you can also buy tools that, and there's lots of different arguments about this, tools that allow you to fret level with the neck under pressure but not curved. And then there's a tool that I've borrowed here from a customer of mine, which is an amazing little Japanese tool, which actually allows you to, this is remarkable, this allows you to level a curved neck, can you believe? So this device is Japanese made. Effectively it's a truss rod with a little I-beam attached to it, and the whole thing, when you put it under pressure, the whole thing bends like a truss rod does. So I can put a bit of relief into this truss rod, or into this surface, and then if the guitar was strung up and with some relief in it, there's a couple of little things in here that I can use to adjust the curvature in this to meet or match the strung curvature of the neck. Once that's the same, then I can slot this between strings because of the I-beam, and I can level with the neck under relief. And I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to do it with this guitar. I'm going to do it with another one. But it's a fabulous thing. The argument for doing that is, as far as I understand, is because the neck, when it's under pressure, is not only curved, but it is experiencing compression as well as curvature, and the compression makes the frets move around differently than when it's not under compression. So the argument would say that to level the frets with a neck not under compression, right, in this relaxed position here, whilst it may look very nice and flat, and it is nice and flat in that stage, the argument is that once it's under pressure, not only does the curvature change, which you expect anyway, that's not the main issue, but under pressure the compression of the wood makes the frets do slightly microscopically different things. And so the argument goes that leveling frets with the neck under the influence of that compression gives you a fractionally more accurate fret leveling than doing it this way. And I borrowed this to kind of experiment with a version of that argument, which is really interesting. But it's a beautiful little piece of kit. But it is essentially a truss rod inside a lightweight box, and it all bends together under the influence of the truss rod, and you match the curvature in the neck and you level with a curve. So you're kind of leveling into a curve. It's amazing. Japanese, beautifully engineered and all that. But this is the low-tech version. If you haven't spent 125 quid on that, or you haven't spent thousands on a Plek machine, or £800 on a Stumac jig, this is the poor man's version, and my experience so far, over 100 and so guitars, produces pretty good results. So if you're going to do the poor man's version, like I am here, your objective is to adjust the truss rod until the neck is as straight as it can be under at rest, because you are at rest. Now I've got, on the treble side, I've got a tiny bit of relief, curvature, and on the bass side I've almost straight and flat, and that's often the case. You get slightly different on one side to the other. But previously I would have thought about playing to the treble side, because that's where you might play most of your lead notes, but maybe an argument would say, well, the place where your strings rotate and move the most and are likely to bash into high frets the most is going to be on the bass side, because they're thicker and they vibrate and spin much more. And to be honest, I haven't really empirically proven it one way or another to my satisfaction, so I don't know which. I'm going to opt for the accuracy on the lead guitar playing edge, right? And that if we need space for the strings to oscillate, we achieve that by setting the relief afterwards. But right now I'm going to remove a little bit of this relief in this neck by make sure I get the right thing, by a very small adjustment clockwise. Get the right one. right one. Okay. So a little tiny turn, and then just re-examine it afterwards. You know, as I say, what it will do is it will change. It's a compromise. I can't get them both exactly straight because one of them is going to be eventually end up convex, while the sort of treble edge is straight. Interestingly, I got set up an Ace Pro guitar the other day, a Telecaster, and it had not only, well, it had a bit of that not twist, but slightly, two sides were slightly different, but it also had a proper good old-fashioned twist on the whole neck. And I was doing a bit of research into different ways of putting that right, and there are a couple of quite nice simple ways of doing it that I've seen, but for the time being I've held off. I'm going to, because I'm more interested actually in seeing to what degree does a twist in the neck of a guitar actually affect the playing, because it's one of those things that I like you or anybody, I'd probably assume instantly that it does, and sort of go hell for leather to try and correct it or throw it away and reject it or whatever. But it occurred to me that that might be a smart thing to do, but even still I have no idea what the impact of that curvature would be, so I thought it would be really nice to just put it all back together again and check it out. So I've done that, and actually it plays, to my mind, it plays really, really well. It has a bit of a grounding issue, which I've got to take it apart and figure out why it's buzzing, but apart from that, I'm not sure straight off that I've been able to detect any detrimental effect of the twist in the neck, which I think is quite cool, really, not to have to panic about it and do a load of stuff to it if it's not necessary, if it just plays. Although it's, you know, it's quite nice to do a fixing experiment, particularly when the one that a particular YouTuber showed was a very neat experiment, or a neat fix. You may have seen it, but what he did was he basically aligned the neck on the bench, and he took the tuners out and he clamped a tuner to a piece of wood down here attached to the bench, and he clamped this end flat, and then he used a tuner with a wire attached to the headstock to tighten up and bend the headstock down and twist it. It was really interesting how he did it. Oh, and at the same time he steamed it or heated it up with a piece of steel and an iron, and that softened it and allowed him to twist it. But yeah, amazing, really. I thought it was a great piece of fix. But anyway, I didn't go ahead and do it because yeah, first of all I wanted to see if it actually played badly because of the twist. So looking down here now, just about flattened out, as flat as it's going to be. And again, like a lot of necks too, it's not, even when it's as flat as it can be, it isn't absolutely even all the way down. There are sort of little humps and ridges as you go, but that's pretty flat, which would be borne out if I put just a ruler onto the fretboard. Oh, sorry, onto the frets. It's as flat as you're going to get it in this condition. Okay, so let's put this out of the way. So, in preparation for doing the fret work, a couple of things I'm going to do. First of all, I need to know what the radius is, and you can do some research, or you can just do a straight, good old-fashioned check with your radius gauges, and you can see straight away it's not 7.25 because there's a nice gap underneath. So next one up, 9.5, seems to fit that perfectly well. 10 fits, but there's a little bit of extra blocking space, and 12, you can start to feel it rock. So I can tell you that's a 9.5, and good discipline would be to check it all the way down. On a Strat like this, you wouldn't expect a compound radius, but don't assume anything. Somebody may have had a special neck put on. You know, don't get caught out. So I have a 9.5-inch radius block that I can use when the time is ready. It's got sticky sandpaper on it, 220 grit. Because this is 220, sorry, this is a 9.5-inch radius and it's accurate, then I know that will work nicely with this. There are occasions when I wouldn't go near this. For example, if I didn't know what this radius was, or if I wasn't sure, I would avoid using this, and I would use a leveling or a sanding beam like this, which is a very flat milled surface, which I just used one of these. It's probably the flattest thing I could find, and you can just do that, and basically you're following the radius manually. Okay, you're not imposing a set radius on it, whereas if you use this, and we know that's 9.5, but let's say that was 9 or 8.5 or something odd, if you went at this, you'd be imposing this radius onto that, and it would cost you a lot of fret material to do it one way or another. So we've got to make sure we know what that is before we start, and if it is definitely a known common radius, then we can use a block. One thing is, if you do use the block and the first thing that you see is that it's cutting only at the edges, then you've made a mistake. Either this isn't the radius you thought it was, or you've got the wrong block or something. So it's, you'd be able to tell straight away as an absolute fail-safe. And if that were to happen, you can stop, ditch that, and go back to using the leveling beam and just allow the beam to follow the natural radius. So it won't be 100% precise, but it will be far better than imposing a different radius onto this thing. Okay, so here's the next stage now, or this is the beginning of the fret leveling process, is masking off the fingerboard of the guitar to protect it, and I'm going to use my special marked up low tack masking tape, because just I want it as unsticky as possible. I really don't want it pulling off loads of lacquer. On new guitars it's not a problem, but on older guitars, if the lacquer is starting to give way and let go of its grip, you can lose bits. So the gentler the tape you can use, the better. So I've got some pre-cut. I use a board like that, and you can buy tape cut into different widths. It's quite expensive. I pay about £1 or something per roll of tape, and I get loads out of it. So it's much cheaper to do it and cut it yourself. But you do need to cut it because you've got to get into progressively narrower gaps between the frets, as you can see, and eventually, very soon, I'm going to reach the point where this width is too great, and I have to switch over to the pre-cut stuff. It's going to be on this next one. It's not bad, it's about halfway down. So what I tend to do is, to make sure I can get it off afterwards, I just go around and pinch it around the back. This is my little technique that saves me a few seconds later on. Just noticed a bit earlier on, by the way, some of these tuners are loose, and it's probably because they're loose on this side, so I'll make sure that they get done up when we put them back on. Sorry, when we put the strings back on. So then I move on to the thinner bits, and I obviously have to double up some of these, double and triple it sometimes, but that's okay. Just to make sure I cover all the joins, and just follow it all the way whilst listening to your favourite tunes or radio, or watching something on your TV or whatever you do to switch your brain off. But it's you can't ever take too much time to protect the fingerboard, particularly if you're doing it for somebody else. You know, it's okay if you mess up your own fingerboard, because heck, you just play the thing, you don't care how it looks too much. But somebody else's, they're not going to be excited if you've sandpapered or scraped the hell out of their nice rosewood, or their ebony, worse yet. Okay, so I'm going to do this and then I'm going to stop, get a cup of tea. Now I know that, well, possibly Malcolm will watch this, but he'll have seen this far too many times already for his own health. And I had a comment from somebody the other day, a very angry, grunty comment from somebody who said something like, "I can't believe this guy. I came here looking for some information on something or other, and all he's done is spent the last half an hour cleaning bits." It's like people get so indignant that you don't do what they expect you to do. It's like, you sometimes have to stand back and go, "Sorry, when did I become your mannequin, your slave?" Hilarious, really. So, yes, I'm sorry if you came here looking for, what is it? 10 tips to a flat belly. Oh no, sorry, 10 tips to perfect guitar setup. It isn't that. I don't make these videos for that purpose. And actually, I don't mean to be horrible, but I don't actually make them for you, first and foremost. And that's the secret of this, is that that's why they're not edited, and that's why I don't cut out the mistakes, and that's why I don't shave or put on special clothes, or, you know, tart up the thing and make it look good, or I don't have special intros and logos and graphics, because they weren't first and foremost made for people. They were made, actually, they were made for a very, very specific audience, and that was people who were interested in either buying a guitar that I'd set up, or people who were perhaps interested or found something they liked about the way I did something, and they were perhaps interested in getting me to look at their guitar. And really, that's the reality of these videos. So if you kind of ever watched more than one of these and you're thinking, why is he doing the same thing every time in the video? It's because from the customer's point of view, they don't really watch all of these videos. They just watch the one that interests them. So it is new to them. But if you've seen a few of these, and I suggest you seek medical treatment. But if you have seen a few of these, you know, you'd know my patter pretty much off by heart. You're pulling your hair out. So I do apologise if you've seen several and you're just thinking, God, I am so tired of hearing this bloke say this thing. Or if you came here looking for some quick tips, top 10 tips, and you had to sit through 20 minutes of me playing around with masking tape, then I kind of apologise, but not that much. So there we have it. It's tea break time, ladies and gentlemen. We have, and I'll double check it again, we have the neck as levelled as it's going to be. I double check it just in case it's sort of gone overboard and suddenly gone concave while I wasn't looking. But that's good, it's ready to go. And just a couple of things before we go for tea break. The process now begins, well, for Malcolm's sake. If you were going to do this levelling, you could just mark up these frets with my marker pen and just take your block and start levelling. You don't even have to mark them up. The only reason we mark them is so that we can tell what's been cut with the paper on sandpaper and what hasn't. But I know Malcolm's done a little check earlier on, so I think he'd be quite interested to see which of these frets are level and which aren't. And this fret rocker is a good way of discovering that, and it's when you place the fret rocker over 3 consecutive frets and try and rock it over the middle one, where one is relatively low, or relatively lower or higher than the others, you'll get a clicking noise, and you can then sort of mark on the fret where that occurs. I've said this loads of times, but this is not an absolute process, meaning that could be showing clicking because that fret is actually higher than these two, or it could be because one of these two is lower and therefore it makes the middle one appear to be higher. Right? So you could, if you wanted to, spend a lot of time by process of elimination working out which it is, but I don't recommend you do, because it's not actually important. When the day of reckoning comes, i.e. this beastie comes scooting down there, it's going to treat them all the same. It doesn't care whether they're high or whether they're low. It's going to make them even relative to each other, and that's all it cares about. It doesn't care which starts off high and which starts off low. These are pretty good. And one of the things that amazed me this year, after about 8 months of doing this, I discovered that it is in fact possible to wear one of these out. Believe it or not, because of the way you use it, one uses it, you will start wearing the same spots. Hello.
Oh, it's windy.
It's windy. That's all right. That's what shades are for.
Is there a Dremel in here?
Yes, ma'am. No, it was.
How's it going?
Yeah, alright, I'm just getting as far as I can get with Malcolm's neck. I think that surprised me about it was, which I've now lost. Sorry viewer, this is going to repeat myself. I'll put it somewhere. This thing here, that is thinner than one you'd get on an Encore Strat. So for a Mexican built Fender, it's cheap and horrible. So even on my Japanese one, well, replace it with a big steel one because it makes the sustain much better. But it's it's a real cost cut, under the new Fender, which is naughty.
Shocking.
It is shocking. Yeah, anyway.
Dun dun dun. New
headlines.
Yeah.
New headlights.
Those as well. Right, I'm going back to polishing.
Okay, I'll be in a bit because I've got to go townwards.
Oh my god.
Good luck.
See the other side of town.
This is pretty good. I'm impressed. As we go, we need to go to a shorter edge eventually. Yeah, this is tiny little bits, but overall, there we go. We hit on one or two, but by and large, this is pretty good condition. So either it's been worked on before, or it's been done somewhere. I mean, I guess it's the issue. It's been done somewhere. The only question is where. Have the frets been levelled in the factory, or has someone since set this up? And a way you can often tell is by looking for telltale signs on the top of the frets, and you can usually see a bit of flattening. And I have to say, these do actually look like they have been possibly been levelled somewhere. Maybe some of them look flatter than others, but anyway, it's usually a good sign that or a sign that it's been done. Because I guess what I'm saying is I've not yet found a guitar that just happened to come out of the factory as level as this. Although we are finding some along the way, but they're very mild, the unevenness. You get to know it when it's severe. It really clicks loudly. There's no mistaking it, but this is very mild. So we're starting to find quite a few. I think that's where Malcolm picked it up anyway. That's where he found his first check showed a fair amount of unevenness, but it's very mild. I tend to, when I'm drawing on it with a pencil, I tend to mark it thicker and heavier where the unevenness is greater. It's just a sort of visual cue to remind me, because it just reminds me to expect to have to work a little more on that area to get it down, get all the frets levelled. Okay, a little bit of rocking there. Again, as I said, this is just for Malcolm's information, really. Sometimes I wouldn't do this checking part. It just gives you a picture of what you're working with. So it's not a problem to do it, but it's not strictly absolutely necessary. I did it quite a bit in the first year of doing Really Love Guitars, because I was interested to build up a picture of which guitars, if any, came with even frets and which didn't. And actually the picture that emerged was that almost no guitars, in fact 0% of guitars came with completely level frets. In fact, the 100% of the 100 or so guitars had uneven frets. The lowest figure was around about 20 to 30%, but that was a very small number, and the vast majority, 50% or I think it was up to 75%, had at least 50% uneven frets. Anyway, so marker pen. I'm going to go over the top of the frets now. Just coat the top of the frets. Be very careful, particularly if you've got a maple fingerboard, because I've said this a million times, but if you slip off the side, the black ink will get sucked under the masking tape onto your beautiful maple, and it's quite difficult to get off, believe it or not. So a bit of care needed when doing this part of the deal, and sometimes, even having said that, I go over the edge and find myself having to clean it up later. You can do what you can do, but just be aware of it. It's that capillary action thing. You touch this at the edge of the paper and... Okay, so reality check. We know it's flat. We know it's 9.5. We know we've got some uneven frets. Not very strong, so it won't take long. We also know that we can just use this 9.5 radius block, and we know that if it cuts at the edges and not, broadly speaking, across all of the fret, we know we've got some mismatch between the radius block and the neck itself, or the frets themselves, and we'd need to stop and think, do we carry on with this and impose the radius of this, or do we switch to a leveling beam, which is it's also working with 220 grit, so it's not going to do it any faster. I used to, more often than not, I used to use this fret leveling file, which is really, really effective. It's Crimson Guitar's tool. It's a very, very effective file. It's very harsh, but it takes down levels frets very quickly. But you know, for the benefit of doing it very quickly, you get left with very, very deep gouges, which then takes you longer in the polishing stage. So it swings and roundabouts, as always. Doing this leveling with a 220, I find is a good sort of medium pitch, because it just means it's easier to polish out. So, noise aside, I'm going to now take a little run down. Okay, so my first swipe of it is showing me more or less it's covering most of the fret, and and it's missing a little bit down the middle, and that tells me, I guess it tells me there is a slight mismatch, but that's only the result of the frets, how they've actually gone in. It is a 9.5 radius. It's good enough. You know, a couple more passes and all of them will be showing signs of scouring, I suppose you could call it. But it's, well, if it was just the very edges, I would be rethinking and saying, okay, do I carry on with this, or do I use the radius, the leveling beam? Okay, so this is good. What we expect to see is where we've shown the high spots, we expect to see more metal being taken off. If we see metal being taken off where we've drawn the lines, then it confirms that fret was actually high. If we don't see metal being taken off there, then it means that the reason that registered as high is because the area somewhere to either side of it was low. So it's kind of now when you find out the reality of the thing, it comes out in a wash now. So I'm not really putting hardly any pressure on this at all. I'm just running it gently and steadily, like my sandpaper, through its work. And I'll turn it around in a minute and just go the other way. And again, what I'm seeing is it's taking the marked areas off, as we'd expect. Just brush off some of the dust onto the floor. It's also, as I said, the other good thing about this is it's taking off the other imperfections, and I can see a couple of dents where we've still got to go a bit lower to get rid of the string grooves where it's worn over time. And that's usually, you get that from playing chords a lot. This isn't massively scientific, this part of it. It's just keeping it on a sort of pretty much level thingy, level run. The other thing to be aware of is when there is often a slight difference between the radius of the neck and the radius of the frets, funnily enough, because people fix or attach their frets with different techniques. So some people crimp or press down either they over radius the fret to try and make it grip and stick in the slot, or they, as I do, they start by pressing down at the edge with a smaller radius brass insert on the fret caul, the clamping, whatever we call it, fret pressing caul, and sometimes maybe they don't. You see, I do it with, if this was I do it with 7.25 and then I do it with a 9.5. So the 7.25 would over press the edges, and then I'd follow up with an exact 9.5 to press the whole length in, and that would spread the fret a little bit. But you'd kind of expect to see a little bit more over pressed on the ends. Or sometimes the opposite's true. Somebody's done this with the opposite way, so they pressed more in the middle and the ends stick up a little bit. So it all depends on the way that it's installed by whoever installed it, person. So the issue is, when you're doing this, you pretty much have to go down to the lowest common denominator in this. So if you have a low spot, you've got to work your way down to that low spot, and it means that all the frets have to go down to that point, which can be a bit scary at sometimes, because if you have a particularly low spot, it can feel like you are having to take quite a lot of metal away to get down to that place. Now, what I'm seeing here is that the ones that we've marked as high are showing having been quite high, they've had a fair bit taken off them. I'm just going to do a quick recheck. That's always a good one to do. It's just whiz over everything you've done, make sure that everything is now level. I'm expecting to find there's some black areas here where the marker pen hasn't been removed, so I'm expecting to find some unevenness still knocking about in there. I'm hoping it isn't, but it would be nice. But if there is, then we'll have to do a little bit more, working away a bit more at it. Tiny little rocking going on there. I'll just mark that. Sort of just for my info, and yeah, I expect it. There's a low spot. You see, there's a set of these frets have got low spots on them, and it's showing up now as little black areas where the pen is not being removed. And that's, in a way, that's the inherent problem that we've got to overcome, is these low spots. And they don't. You wouldn't know this until they show up like this. But one man's low spot is another man's high spot, and they create the same effect, which is to cause the string to just choke out. Okay, so by and large, it's not too bad. I'm just going to work on this last bit now. Which is, although I hate to do this because it feels like I'm going down to the lowest pits. We're almost there. They're just touching the tops of the frets now. There we go. I think that will be it. Okay, so I've got my tea break, so I didn't have to stop. So that will be pretty much all done. I've just chipped the top of all of these, and I know that the leveling file has now touched everything. Now what I do is take the pen again, and this is the next stage. Stage 2 is to reprofile these frets. So to level them, we have more or less flattened the tops of these, and some frets more than others. So the higher the fret was, the more flat it's going to be as a result of this, in order to get it level with everything else. And a flat topped fret is no good for playing, for a start, because it would just feel awful to play. The string would grind along it. But it also, because of the flat plateau, if you like, it changes the intonation point, so that the intonation would be all off, just slightly, but it would be off. So we have to reshape these frets so that they become rounded again, and that makes them fret shaped, but it also makes sure that the intonation point is back at the centre of the top centre of the fret. And we do it with a crowning file like this. This is quite an expensive tool from StewMac in America, but it's well worth its money, and it's quite a long shot, I'm afraid, but stay still. It's a concave tool with diamond coating, and the idea is we run it over our backwards and forwards like this over the fret, and it basically starts to just gently cut away the sort of squared shoulder that the flat spot makes, and we just want to do that until we've left only a tiny little thin strip of black down the centre, and we stop at that point and move to the next one. And if we can do all of those that way, leaving that pencil thin line, or actually really tiny thin line, as thin as possible, it means we've rounded the fret off, but we haven't taken any of its height away, because the fact that there's still marker pen on it tells us that we haven't touched the very top with our file, and that tells us that the very top surface is still exactly the same height it was, so we've retained our levelness. And that's the task of this, and it's, again, it isn't something that takes a lot of force, it just takes care and attention, really. Sometimes you will find, through no fault of your own, the file will take just scuff off the pen, and no matter what you do, you can't seem to preserve it in the middle, in which case you go stop as soon as you can. And you'd be pretty sure that you haven't gone any further down than is absolutely necessary. It'll be pretty close. What you'll find is where the fret leveling has taken quite a lot of material, you have to do a bit more work. It'll take a little longer to round the thing off. So you can probably see that I'm sticking on this one a little bit more because it's flatter than the rest of the fret. And so is the case with all the ones that were high. There are certain spots that will take longer to reshape. But it's just a matter of patience and sticking with the side that's flattest and just trying to work that a little bit without overdoing the rest of the fret. It's quite delicate. Again, all the attention is focused on that tiny thin line, and once we've got all of those done that way, then we're ready to start sandpapering it and bring it up to a nice shine. So I'm going to stop this for now while I do this, come back to you when I'm ready to do the sandpapering so you don't get too bored. Right, okay, so these frets now all are reprofiled, and so we're ready now to polish them. And I'm going to use a combination of fingers and a foam block, and I'm going to turn the volume down here because it's going to get a bit noisy, so hold on. It gets really noisy, so I'll try to save you from it a bit. Yeah, there we are. Right, so let's start with the 600 grit. So we had 220 grit on our block. We had 300 grit on that, so I'm going to go 600 and just start working over the top of it with my fingers, because I want my fingers to go up and over the fret, preserve the round profile or the arch profile. I don't want to flatten them. I'll just keep going. And the thing is, we're going to do two or three or maybe 4 of these 600, and we're going to run with the micro mesh set, which is 1500 through to 12,000. And that's to give it the final polish. So I'm going to turn around and come the other way. I'm also conscious that Malcolm said that the edges were a little bit sharp on the frets, so while I'm here, I'm just going to soften the edges off a little bit. A bit of extra edge treatment, and that will make it a bit less sharp on the fingers. One. Switch around. In a moment On the next sheets I'm going to switch to the foam block. Give my fingers a break. Foam block, sandpaper. Switch over. And last one. Okay, now onto these. Stick on this 1500 a little bit longer. nearly there. And the last one. Okay, done. Right, there we have it. We are at the stage of removing the tape, and that's the whole sanding, polishing routine done. A bit tiring, long-winded, but you have to do it because if you don't, you will leave microscopic scratches on the frets, and they'll look okay until you come to play it, and then you'll feel the difference. So you've got to get it polished properly, otherwise it's just too much of a letdown. No point going through all of this to level the frets and make it precise if you can't bend the strings once you've done it because it's too scratchy. So after quite a few different experiments and so on, that's my routine. It's the sequence of papers and the length of time I spend on each to get the kind of results I'm happy with. And I used to do an extra step with the Dremel, which was very messy, and actually I found for the time involved didn't actually add that much, if anything, of an additional finish to it. So I kind of cut that out. Also because I don't think it wasn't finer polishing. I think it was. The 12,000 grit is pretty fine. I think some of the polishing compounds I was using were probably going backwards in terms of their abrasiveness. So here we go, here's the fun bit. Off comes the tape, nice and simple, and then underneath it lives your beautiful, safely protected fretboard and your lovely levelled frets, beautifully polished and ready to play. If I can just get the stuff off. And then what I will do, despite everything I said earlier on, or because of everything I said earlier on, is I'll give this a quick going over with Naphtha to get all the dust off, because it's a pretty mucky process. And then give it a very quick light once over with oil, which is the only time I'll oil it, or even recommend that it's oiled. And then it's going to hang up till next weekend when I get to complete. Get there. Come on, almost there. Pink. Lovely. Beautiful. All done. Cloth from somewhere. That one. Just mainly to get the dust off now, because it picks up quite a bit during that process, gets underneath everything, so it's worth just giving it a rub down. nice and clean. Another thing I can do today in advance is clean all the components as well. Now, just a quick point of order here. So if you remember the sequence, we took off the neck. Oh, sorry. God. Took off the neck and hang on, there's going to be an accident any second now. Stay on there. Right, we took off the neck and before doing the fretwork, I made sure I levelled the neck with the truss rod. And so, if you think about it, if we just put this neck back on the guitar and put it under tension, we'd not have as much relief in it as we did previously, because we've straightened it out even more than it was. So we've got to be conscious that when we put this back on and load the strings up, it's going to have a little bit less relief than previously. So we know that we're going to need to adjust it to get it back to where it was. It's not like we're going to miss it, because we're going to check it anyway, but it's just, you can anticipate that because you know that you've taken some relief out of it already in order to straighten it for fret leveling. Sometimes if there was too much in it, what you can find is you take the neck off, level it with the truss rod, do the work, put the neck back on, load it with strings, and then find it plays just great. And sometimes what it will tell you is that you had too much relief on it previously, but we never, it won't guess it. We'll see what happens when we put it back on. Okay, so this is the mucky cloth bit and the bit of light oiling, which critics will no doubt slate me. It's just going to be enough to darken the doorstep. No, darken the fretboard a little bit. And that's all, just to bring its nice grain, basically. You see it better with when it's got a little bit of this oil. But I will go back over it and take off the excess, because I don't want it attracting too much gunge. So I think it's a fair compromise, don't you? Not so much that would stick things to it and build up more grime, not so much that it would loosen the frets off and things pop out, but enough that it just brings out that lovely deep rosewood and the grain of that wood. So there we have the levelled frets ready to go. I'm going to hang that up on somewhere over here without dropping the camera on the floor. Not a good arrangement I've got there. So this fella can dangle for the week. I'm going to also put the body up out of the way so it doesn't get trodden on or knocked over if people are in and out of the shed. This one can stay up here. So yeah, there we have it. The made in Mexico Fender Stratocaster in beautiful electric dark blue metallic matte finish. Nice looking thing. Crappy tremolo bridge arrangement, but should be a nice player when we put it back together again and restring it next weekend. So I'll see you then. So here's the game. Right, we have 2 blocks of post-it notes, one of about 6mm, one of about 4. Right, don't know which one we use when. That's a good point. Yeah, why do we need 2 lots? Well, I don't know. Let's start with a smaller one. So the first thing we do is, according to this list, we what's this? Oh god, my knees hurt. We need to just put in as many post-it notes as is required to get the tremolo, the bridge, horizontal. Okay, so that's what the post-it notes for. There are however many you need to get it horizontal. That's what you need. So it allows you to add one or two. I'm going to say that will do there. Okay, there's my bridge horizontal. Then it says tune the G to pitch. Okay, so I'm just going to tune the G to pitch using this. Probably better if it was plugged in, but hey. Just making like it's a D. So let's call that G. Then this is amazing. This is the bit that catches me out, right? So we've tuned that to G with the post-it notes in place with a thing horizontal. Then it says remove the post-its, okay? Press down until G equals E. Which, to be honest, would really benefit from me being connected to the amp, because this isn't coming out clearly. So let's connect this to an amp so we can at least hear. Which I haven't got much room now. Well, I just want to hear. Really crudely balance that on there. It's not good practice, but maybe lead. It just helps to be able to hear this thing rather than imagine it's tuning. Thank you. So we want it to be an E. As many post-it notes as we need to make that note an E, the G note. One sheet more, that's what I reckon. If I can just get one sheet more under there. You see what I'm doing, sort of. Oh, one sheet is too many. Oh, I've lost it again. Right. Too many, one less. Okay, let's call that, we'll call that E. Okay? So it says press down until G equals E and insert the correct number of post-it notes until it stays as E. Then it says tune the whole guitar perfectly to pitch. If you can see, there's the tuner. Be able to stop everything else making a noise. So we're going to tune it to pitch again, so E, B, Don't mind that it's on its back, okay? We're only doing this for the purpose of setting the tremolo range. Okay, there's it set. Woo, remove post-its. Now, this is the fun part. Switch over to the back. We'll take out the tremolo arm at this point because we can't do it otherwise. Take the trem out. We're going to tune the guitar using the screws at the back, which I didn't really tell you that bit. So that F there is too high, so we're going to come out with these. Use the screws to tune it now to the E we need it to be. If I can stop everything playing. If I can do it, it's too much noise. So we'll do it on the top E better. So keep coming out. Noise, noise, noise. So our top E is now coming down towards E. So a little bit more undoing. It's a brilliant method. I'll recap it in a minute so you can write it down if you need to. But as I say, Galeazzo Frieder himself shows a much better way, or says it much more clearly. Almost there. Now, the point about this, you're thinking, well, how did that will work? I don't know. It's all mysterious. Now, the issue here is if we now replace our tremolo, what you'll see is that our tremolo is sitting in a slightly canted position, right? And this is going to be in tune, right? But it will allow us, or we can tune it now exactly if we want. Let's do it just to the spot on. Right, now we have the idea of this is to give ourselves, when we pull back, we get 1.5 tones on the G, so that should go from G to whatever that is. A sharp. There's a tremolo range. Nearly there. Not quite there actually, but nearly there. I'm going to put more, tie this up properly so it's not flapping around loose. It'll probably make a bit of a difference. Okay, so from G. Nearly to A flat. Yeah, A sharp. Sorry. That's the aim of it. And then 2, and then from E to F. We're fractionally off, but it's close enough. So that's the whole point of this, is to get an upward range within, about a tone and a half, and then as much downwards as you need. Loose this tremolo arm for my liking. If anything, that's telling us we need a fraction more backwards movement, in which case, realistically, I can adjust this and say, what do I need? I need this to come out a little bit further, because I need a bit more movement. So let's just adjust this manually. So I'm going to go slacken it a tiny bit further off, and a little bit arbitrary here, a number of turns, and I'll retune again. go for G. Remember, I want tone and a half. There we are. So that little guesstimate worked. Stretching. Yeah, well, it's still too much stretching here for my liking, but there you go. That's the method. So, what do? You take off the rear plate, so you've got access to your tremolo claw and the screws there. Just straight away tighten in the tremolo screws until they're right in, right? So go all the way in, or most of the way in, and that will pull the tremolo plate flat against the body of the guitar anyway. And then what you need to do is get your post-it notes, and with the tremolo arm in, you basically you just first of all put enough post-it notes in to make sure that the back end of the tremolo is lifting up just slightly, so that the whole plate is horizontal. That's your start point. With that in place, then you tune your G to pitch. Okay, and then once you've tuned the G to pitch, you remove the post-its and you press down with the tremolo until that G becomes an E, and then you hold it there and fit as many post-it notes underneath that as required to hold that in a position where that stays as an E. Once you've done that, then you tune the whole guitar up, and then you pull out the post-it notes, then you go over to the back and you use the tremolo screws on the back to tune the guitar back up to make sure that the high E, for example, just monitor it on high E, tune the high E back up to an E, evening out the screws as you go. On the back, the two screws, slackening them off a certain amount, and that will then allow your stop when your high E becomes an E again. And then you'll have enough play in your tremolo for a tone and a half on a G backwards, a tone on the B, and half on the E. Okay, and that's how you set it. I've explained it really badly because I'm still kind of having to memorise it or learn it each time I do it. But if you want to go to Galeazzo Frudua's website and look for Frudua TV. He will show you how to do these things, and they are a revelation. They're really simple. The thing about it is, and it might be strike as a bit odd, but if you try and conceptualise what he's doing too much, if you try and work it out, you just never get started. I heartily recommend you just follow his instructions and let it work out in your mind later. Don't try and work it out as you're doing it, because you'll just get lost. Just follow his instructions, and hey presto, you will have correctly tensioned tremolo for floating tremolo performance on a 6-screw tremolo. And follow his instructions, and that's all I recommend. Probably don't try and follow mine, because I've probably left off a little bit, but definitely follow him and just have faith. Have faith, it will work out. So there we are, pretty much done. Just going to tune it one last time, put it off to the side. That was how much stretch came out. also I'm getting the tremolo arm in the way, which doesn't help. Don't get caught out that way. One last little thing actually, by the way, sorry, I completely forgot. While I'm at it, the final act in this little theatrical drama, of course, is the intonation, which I was about to go away without doing. So while we're here, let's plug this back in. We've got the tuner up. Let's do the thing. We'll do it in playing position-ish. Simplest way. I just need myself a fairly fine screwdriver to do the adjustments of the screws. The intonation, we're just tweaking the length of each string to make it correct for the neck on this guitar. We do that rather than try and measure it physically. We do it using the tuner to tell us whether we've got the correct length. So how we do it is, let's start with a tune the string to pitch, and we want to tune the harmonic on the 12th fret to pitch. Okay, now if we've got the correct length of string for this neck, then what will happen is the pinged harmonic will be exactly the same note as the fretted 12th fret. It's close. Let's keep on going, have a look at some of the others. Close. Good. I was going to say that whoever set this guitar up before had done it, but of course they didn't, because I've just taken all the saddles off, so I've put it together in a fairly well intonated way, so that's pure luck really. Now let's do it to fine tune. By the way, one thing I've just noticed that I just need to double check is when you do set your tremolo, what happens is, because it pitches forward, you will change your action slightly. So the action here has gone higher than I want it, so before I set the final intonation, I've got to readjust the action on the saddles here, which is one thing to really watch out for. I want to take that back to 1.5 millimeters. It's going to change all my tuning for a second, but I will readjust that. So just now go and physically adjust all of these into the correct radius curve across the neck. I'll try and get them to sit slightly to one side because they're sitting in favour of the bass side of the neck a bit. Again, this will take a little bit of time just to get this action correct. Again, we'll need to retune, but I'm just watching out for the playing action, make sure we get back to roughly where we were. So currently it's a little bit too high for my liking still. Oh, stay still, will you? So we're on just over 2, so I want to take these down a little bit and take it down to 1.5. And also to do that, this is sitting right on the tremolo fixing screw, so I'm going to have to hoist it back a little bit in order to set this action correctly. So we are now on 1.6, which is good. 1 point, slightly more, 1.6 there. That's good there. Good there. Good there. And slightly low there. Okay. Total retuning required because of that, but just wanted to point that out. You will get a different action. When you've got a tremolo, floating tremolo, you have to be careful what your right hand's doing because it will change the tuning just when you don't least expect it. Just little tweaks there. Right, let's go. I'm going to carry on and just do the intonation now on these strings, just as I'm tweaking the action one last tiny bit. Looks okay for now. Right, back to the run through on the intonation. Pretty good. Good. That is probably a fraction too short or too sharp, so I'm going to just pull that saddle back a tiny bit and retune it. Good. 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 Sorry about that. Left my phone talking. This horrible bloody thing going off. Shouldn't have it. I forgot to switch it off. Go away. Right. I'll just double check the action here and there. At 1 point, well, it's nearly 2 actually. Go down a tiny fraction. There's 1.65, it's 1.65, 1.65, 1.5, 1.5. Done. Job done. That's it. So sorry about that faffing about. Took a bit longer. It always does when I throw in the setting up the tremolo part of it. This is an amazing amp. I've never worked out yet where the on and off button is. This is impossible. I've had it about 3-4 years. Okay. Good morning. Welcome to the Reloved Guitars workshop. I'm Sam. This is my birthday hat from last week. It's good for being out in the country in the rain. It's a proper Australian original, so it replaces a hat I had many years back. And I don't know about you, but I've reached that age where I wish it was back in the 50s, 1950s, where I could wear a hat and get away with it. In the countryside, you can. Anyway, so we're back onto this Mexican Fender Stratocaster, Malcolm's Mexican Fender, and the job today is to get this thing back together again and set up. So we have here a ready done neck. I did it last week. Sorry. So here it is, gently fret leveled, cleaned up. So the frets are all nice and level, and everything's good. There are a couple of loose tuners here that I just want to adjust quickly. If I hadn't just lost the smaller of my adjustable spanners, which is funny because I don't know where that's gone. It's not under the hat. Okay, well, I'll have to go on a bit of a search for that. Filed in down here somewhere. I don't know. How's it down here? So just having a look at my YouTube numbers yesterday, and something like 600 subscribers to this channel, which, as you can tell, I never really set up with I didn't set up with the intention of being a Reloved Guitars channel. It's just my YouTube identity, so which is why it doesn't have any fancy sort of business name or anything like that. And being a sort of middle-aged bloke, it's all just too complicated to try and adjust it. So kind of on the basis that if it isn't broke, I'm not going to try and fix it anymore. I'm just going to leave it as is, leave well alone, sort of thing. Right. So what have we got here? We've got some things that look like they need a bit of a clean, so I will do that. Let me just put the body off to one side for a minute. Got a few things on this weekend. It's busy as anything. I've got 3 guitars to do by tomorrow afternoon. Also today I want to install this LR Bags active element system pickup into my Taylor, baby Taylor, and it's a job I haven't done before, so it's my guitar at risk. So that's interesting. I've also I bought this string stretcher, which I'm going to try out on Malcolm's freshly restrung guitar in a minute. But in the meantime, I've just got to get my components, give them a bit of a clean off. Let's see what we've got. It's always good to just revisit your bits and pieces like. There are certain things that if it was my guitar I would take off, like the plastic cover, but it isn't my guitar, so I'm not going to force someone else to have that done against their will. All the parts on this guitar are nice and clean, really, because it's been, whoa, nearly tipped that over. It's been kept in good nick by Malcolm's son Adam. Again, I would, if it was my guitar, I'd take the little CE things off. You know, I guess you have to have those when you sell them in shops, or when you sell them new. That's part of the safety standard labelling or something. But I think all bits of paper stuck to guitars and make them a bit on the ugly side. So everything here is looking good nick. We've got Fender stamped bridge saddles. Yeah, sorry, I've just gone completely distracted myself. I was going to say, checking the YouTube numbers, I kind of think it's probably about time that I just said hello to subscribers when I do a video like this, because with 600 people subscribing, it's no longer just me doing stuff into the void, which is kind of where I started. The videos, when I began doing them, the videos were really just aimed at people who may be interested in buying one of my guitars on eBay. But obviously now there's a group of you folks out there who, due to some underdiagnosed medical condition, end up watching several of these videos, and that, I guess that's a different thing. So hello to everybody out there who does, and I suppose thank you very much is the first thing. It's a bit odd and weird to think that people watch on a regular basis. As I say, it wasn't intended quite that way, but now that you do, or if you do, really appreciate your support and comments that many of you have given me over the time, and I really appreciate even those who disagree but yet remain subscribed. The vast majority have remained respectful and friendly even when they disagree with something. So, you know, to me that's the only hope for the future of our planet, frankly, is right here in YouTube, you know, as an example of just how we relate to each other. If we can't do it respectfully and peacefully and in a civilised way here, then we can't do it anywhere else in the world. So it really pleases me to set the expectation that people will be polite. So thank you for that. I know it's a big deal to sort of link it all into everything else in the universe all at the same time, but you know, we are seeing a kind of increasingly worrying world where, as we all know, there are ideologies, many, not just Islamic State, but lots of other fundamentalist ideologies which have no respect for others, and you know, the default position is to treat the person who doesn't share your view as inherently wrong, and from that perspective, when somebody's wrong and you think you're right, then what happens is you sort of default, you let go of any kind of requirement or obligation to treat them in a respectful, humane way, and I think that's the real tragedy of the times we're in. I'm just going to make some noise now, by the way, sorry. Just going to gently put in these neck screws. Sorry folks, it won't be long. Now this is set to default, or set to 4 on the torque, or the sort of torque setting on this thing. It's not exactly very sophisticated, but it's quite good to know that we're not going over bolting these. And I probably would like to add a hand turn or two just to make sure. Now when I put a neck back on, as well as checking beforehand that make sure it's got no shims that have to go in place, I also just run around and just make sure that it sits correctly. Believe it or not, I found that it is possible to get a neck to tighten up whilst it is actually sitting in the wrong, you know, it can pinch on certain parts and it can end up screwing together but be quite considerably out of its socket. So don't assume just because it's done up that it's sitting correctly. You know, make sure you double check it, and that's just a sort of common sense visual check, really. You're looking around and seeing, you know, is this thing, first of all, is it set in the correct plane, which it is. Is it attached correctly? Yes. And we can just give it one final hand turn just to kind of add that extra bite. Make sure it's really tightly done. Again, it gets a bit greasy-fied with fingers touching it as we handle it, so we'll clean it all off again in the end. This is a last little sort of pull-in to keep it really nicely firmly attached. Seal that joint. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is replace the tremolo parts, and then put the bridge back together, and the saddles together, and then put the whole thing together. So for these purposes, what I'll do is I'll just shift it off to one side, when it doesn't need to be sitting on the bench. Put it on the other table, which is so good to have two. And then, oh god, sorry, mic stand's a bit droopy. So yeah, take my saddles and the little saddle screws and the springs, and get them ready to redo. One thing to be careful of when you're redoing your bridge saddle is just a couple of things. First of all, make sure that sometimes you have some of these saddles have very short grub screws. They tend to be the E saddle at either end. Sorry about that crow thing. Yeah, so some guitars have the E's on either side have very short grub screws, just because they don't need to be so high. But on this one, it's all the same height. I'm just noticing there's a bit of grime on the front of the saddle, so I'm just going to wipe that off. It's just little things that can, might as well make this thing look as clean and sparkly as we can. So this is a made in Mexico Strat, and lots of people have different views about these, and I haven't played many of them. I've just worked on one before this, and that belonged to John, and I think it had been so long since it had had any treatment that it played really badly, or it played relatively badly, and there was some cracking and flaking of the lacquer on the fingerboard as well. It was so old and a bit unloved. So I've not really had time to live with one and get used to playing it. So it'd be quite interesting to play this for a little bit before Malcolm comes at 5 o'clock today to pick it up. Okay, so all of these are pretty much the same. I'm going to readjust all of them, so I can pretty much start with anyone I like. The springs are slightly different lengths, so just need to be aware that there are 2 out of the set of 6 that are slightly shorter, which means they would more than likely, if I'm thinking about it, they'd probably go 3 long ones and then 1 long one, 2 short ones, just thinking about the amount of pull. So I'm going to put them back together again. Difficult thing here is to get this thing back together again without putting too many fingerprints back down on the chrome that you've just cleaned, because that was the point of taking all this off, so you could clean up the chrome quite a bit. This isn't the best screwdriver head. Want a slightly finer one, please. Okay. So, yeah. So thank all of you strange people out there in YouTube world for subscribing and for sending messages and asking interesting questions, challenging questions.
It's getting warmer.
It's getting warmer.
I'm having to make my own rings. It's right though. It's quite good.
Good-o.
Might get some hammering in there.
Yeah, I'm hoping. this one's fiddly. Getting them to bite the first time when you're trying to put these in can be quite a pain. And this is where you've got to be careful that you don't somehow ping off the spring, because it's, I don't know why, but the springs are always just dying to go flying. That's a good rhyme, isn't it? And very often you'll be working on something like this and there'll be a and then as it hits the ground miles away, somewhere in the recesses of the shed, that you'll never find it again. So it's very good to have a supply of spare springs, even if you have to cut them down to length from some other piece of spring, because springs aren't usually totally critical. You can often make do with leftover bits, and it will really save the day to have a few hanging around. Yeah, so it's really great to have a lot of people who, I think that not only that people watch these things, but it's really interesting to hear from so many people who say that they've used the slow, unedited, step-by-step kind of videos that I've made to help them, or to build up the confidence for them to do things themselves on their guitars. And in some ways I kind of knew from the outset that process would be really helped by taking the time and not editing the videos. And though it's very, it's really weird, because at the time I also recognised that long unedited videos is very much counter-cultural in YouTube, and I knew that also a lot of people, or I figured some people would be really pissed off at the idea of a 3-hour video. And to be fair, there have been one or two people commenting sort of angrily like, I came here looking for this and he spent an hour cleaning. It's like, well, yeah, that's just what it takes, but anyway, so it's rare, but I was sort of conscious of that at the beginning. But the overriding thing, if I'm honest, is the fact that when I began doing this, I don't have enough time anyway. Even if I did want to edit, it just wouldn't be practical. So there's a sensible sort of principle.
I haven't had one of those today.
Oh yeah, hello. Family life. I'm looking for. Really, I really need a spanner that goes in there, but I don't think I've got anything that really works. No. Very, very tricky. It's going to have to be a pliers affair, which is less than satisfactory. I mean, there is another possible. Is there another way of doing it? Taking that out, and no, still difficult. This is the need to do up these things. I've got a tool that allows me to put inside the jack plug socket and hold it in place from the inside while I do it up from the outside. But the design of these things is such that there is practically no room at all to get in and turn this thing. So it's a really stupid design in the long run. I mean, how you're supposed to do up grip or do up this. I can't do it with this. It's just not happening. So there is a little extra bit of tool here, but it doesn't really, if I'm not mistaken, it doesn't really help. I'll have a look for it anyway. Sorry about this. This is probably some of the most boring bits. I look desperately for a tool I think I need to to do something. Ow. And it's, you know, all of this hassle because of a really fundamental design flaw. So somebody's designed a socket that does up. It's very, very difficult to do with ordinary household tools. And particularly when the part you need, now here's a thing, but it's not, this isn't even the thing that'll work. What was this about? There's a part that came with this, but even that isn't going to help. That's just a, what does this bit do? Not a lot. Sorry, this is boring. I'm just trying to figure out how the hell I'm going to get access. Actually, in real money, about the only way I'm going to get to do this, which is totally stupid, is to take this out, take it out and have better access to it in a way that I really didn't want to have to do, which is to do it up by holding it in place. But still, there's almost no grip other than with pliers. I don't even think any of my sockets will usefully go in there. I've tried this before. 12mm too small. Okay, 13mm. Again, it's sort of, the 13mm will turn it, so it gives me a bit of a purchase. But it all depends on being able to actually hold the rest of the unit dead still while I turn it, and not stress it out and break it. Well, that's as good as I'm going to get. Useless. Boo, hiss. Sorry. Stratocaster is not alone in such strange design things. It's I think it's probably better designed all round than the Gibson Les Paul as a guitar, but so that will hold it, which is a bit of a primitive way of solving the problem. But I'll leave the 13 on there to remind myself that is the thing that does the job. Okay, so we're back to putting our tremolo back in. Now this one I'm going to, these were quite tight when they came out, so I'm just going to make sure that we get them right on the way back in. I'm going to set the tremolo up the Fredua way, the way shown by Galeazzo Fredua, and it's I'm going to have to rethink it all the way through. I've got it written down somewhere, but it's quite a, unless you've done it hundreds of times, which I haven't, it's quite a complex, but it's a process you have to follow in sort of step-by-step logic, and I will save you the misery of me doing that. If you want to find out how to set the 6-point floating, you want to set the 6-screw tremolo in a way that floats and allows you to trim in all directions, then Google Galeazzo Fredua. That's Galeazzo, Galeazzo Fredua, F-R-U-D-U-A, and you'll find all of his videos. He's got a huge amount of videos. He's a luthier and a songwriter and a Beatles vocal harmony expert as well. And he does all kinds of great things. But one of the things he's done that's superb and very, very helpful is that he gives a tutorial on how to set both these 6-screw trems and also the floating 2-point tremolos that you get on the standard. You get on some of the USA Strats and also some of all of the Squier standard series. So just going to make noise a minute. Sorry, I'm going to try and turn the volume down to save you the misery as I just do this up. Going to attach the springs to the other side, and then I'm going to go off and do my little bit of quick research into the foudoir method to refresh myself with how it's done. Now, interestingly, I haven't checked with Malcolm whether he wants it with a tremolo or whether he wants the tremolo locked down. There isn't a tremolo arm in the pot. Maybe I should check. In a sense, it would save time if I didn't set it up. It's currently locked down. Anyway, yeah. Let me switch off. I'm going to go and check this because it saves me doing a whole bunch of settings. Which aren't necessary if he doesn't want it. I know that Malcolm doesn't play with a tremolo arm on any of his other guitars, so smart thing would be to do the check. So I'll come back to you in a minute. Okay, I've taken a bit of a break. I've just been restringing this with old strings for the purpose of... I'm not quite sure which way to go about this, so the purpose of wanting to get the action right, first of all, then get the nut slot right, and then get the tremolo set right, and then the intonation finally. So kind of to get this underway, I've chosen to load it up with some old strings, which is a bit precarious because they don't quite stay in, sometimes they keep popping off. But anyway, this is finally start. They're not actually that old, but they're from a guitar that didn't have much play. So I put these other strings on, and I set 1.5 millimeters on the 22nd fret, which is playing absolutely superbly, I have to say, at the moment. If anything, it could use a fractionally bit more relief in it, and then it will be kind of perfect. But then we need to set the tremolo. I'll just look at the end here on the nut slots, and I don't think there's anything in this to adjust. In fact, I'm not going to adjust it. They're perfect. For once, in my experience, they are spot on. Now, which means we'll do a little bit of relief in the tiny bit of relief in the neck. Just give the strings a tiny bit more room to spin, if you like. So I'm going to go counterclockwise. It might be I need a different tool. Where's it gone? Counterclockwise. So I'm just taking all of the truss rod pressure off so that the strings can bend the guitar neck. I'm just going to let it sort of catch up. These are light strings, so there's some relief in there. Quite light, so the 9s plays quite nicely. Like it. It's come out well. We've got 1.5 millimeters all the way across there. Some people like a bit higher on their bass strings. To me, it only really kind of matters if you're hitting them hard and they need a tiny bit more room to kind of spin around, but I'll give it a little bit extra, but it's hardly needs it. I just noticed in doing this, one of the saddles has got a unusually short grub screw in it compared to all the others, so that's a bit of an oddity. Some relief. There is some relief, roughly that much. Not a lot. There's more on the treble side, as is always the case, only fractionally. Just have another quick check, and then we got 1.6, about the same all the way actually. So we just might crank these up a fraction higher again. Okay, I'm going to stop there with the action. So, what have we got? We need to basically set the tremolo right, but I think I'm going to want to do that with the actual strings on, which I now have misplaced. No, there they are, right there. Yeah, so, sorry, this is a bit dragged out. So, normally we'd use these spare strings to set the nut slots because there's quite a bit of taking off and putting back on to do. In this case there isn't, so I'm going to chuck these off and replace them with the new strings now that will be staying on the guitar. So if these come, I'm not really going to get a chance to use them again, so we'll cut these this time and bin them. It's good for test use. Okay, so off you come. I think these pliers have kind of had their day, actually. Or nearly. So, off with these old ones, spare ones, on with the real ones. And then we'll go into the setting the tremolo using the Galeazzo Freddoir method. Hard to say an Italian sounding name when you're not Italian. Freddoir. Who knows? Nice guy, very talented. So all of those away, and let's get stuck into this. So the method that I learned, I've got it on a piece of paper. I say learned, I have to read the piece of paper each time. But the good thinking, Samuel. Before I get into doing this, one of the things that Malcolm said is that he felt that these frets were a little bit sharp on the edges, and I'm wondering whether my little flexible sandpaper devices can't help to take a bit of that extra sharpness off, coupled with actually this will probably do just as well, a bit of straight edge with a bit of sandpaper, soft sandpaper. So I don't want to sort of get too much, don't really go too much on the edge of the wood there, but I just want to see if we can just soften up those edges a tiny bit. It is just minuscule. I mean, one way of doing it is early on to do it with by hand when we've got the board all masked off, but in this case we don't. I'm wondering also if it's worth possibly using the little fret protector. It's a bit mashed up at the moment. I can make another sheath for it, I suppose. No, we can't really. I guess we still can't get too much of it, and I don't want to end up scrubbing the whole fret and messing up the work I've already done on it. It's just a bit silly, really. Which I'm about to do if I'm not careful. Right, so I'm going to do this by hand very, very carefully, using this little bit of sandpaper. I'm just going to go around corners, but I don't like that scratching going on. Difficult to do without either masking it all off again. They are a little bit on the sharp side. Honestly, do I want to mask all this off again? I guess I would have to if I'm going to do these corners. Where is the, it's difficult, but it's finding where the sharpness is in the overhang. Right, I'm going to turn this off a minute. Okay, just did a little bit of sanding down the edge of those frets, just quickly to get them slightly less sharp. So that's a nice quick work over. I'm just going to do a little bit of the evil oil onto the neck, just as a last thing before we put the strings on, just to give it a little bit of colour. Kind of lift off the dust and give it a colour. I know it's very bad and shouldn't be putting oil on a guitar neck, but everybody does, and it looks kind of nice and won't kill it. And take off the excess so it just looks a little bit nicer. Right, so time to get some strings on now. Get this guitar heading towards its final state. Sorry if you can see that. Actually, while I'm at it, let me see if I can find another saddle grub screw thing for this guitar. It's a spare one, I think. It shouldn't have a shorty there. Let's pull out one of these. Oh. Yeah, let's pull it out. It's dazzling me. It's the only one on this whole block that's short, so it just kind of stands out really. We'll quickly replace it with another one that's much better. Same size, or same diameter, fits in nicely, balances up beautifully. There we go. Spare. Right, onwards and upwards. Make sure when you're stringing, make sure the string on a Strat goes all the way through the body and up. Otherwise, if you get it sort of caught halfway, you'll get a massive bang later on as it jumps forward. So I go up to the end, pull back about 3/4 of a fret to give myself some wind on. Okay, it's got our music going there. So the first time I want to go over the top of the slack, and then as it comes around again, hoist the slack up and press the caught string or the playing string underneath the slack, so it's 1 over and 2 under. Okay, and I'm just going to clip down to about 1 inch for the time being. Funny little regime I have there. The reason I don't clip it off all in one go is that I like to give myself a little bit of free play in case I need to take the strings off and on again. Take them on and off. It gives me a piece of clear string to re-thread through the body. If I just try and do it with the crimped strings, it's a really hard job to do. So that's my little insurance policy. As long as I get everything right and everything works okay now, then I'll just cut that off. But it just gives me that bit of freedom to re-thread if I have to. And it doesn't cost anything to build that into it. So make sure it's through all the way, seated properly, pull back best part of the fret over the spare string the first time, then flick the spare string up and then push the caught string underneath. What the proper turns for these things are, and then chop it off with a couple of inches or 1 inch to spare. Nice guitar this. It feels really nice to play. So Mexican Strats, nothing wrong with them as far as I can see. I think there's a lot of people I think believe that the Mexican Strats are currently as good as the Americans. There's a lot of people don't like the current American quality. I haven't seen any American ones, so I can't tell. I wouldn't be able to offer an opinion on it. I'm trying to think where and when I might have played an American Strat. I think I've played one in America. Hello.
Hello. Your rubbish bag is dangerous.
Yeah,
Safety
I know,
inspector
everything's
says.
dangerous. Okay.
How's it going?
Alright, just going to do the Galeazzo Fredua tremolo method in a minute. And then so tremolo setting and then intonation. And then I'm done with this one. And I've got to move on to the scary miking up the tailor, which involves drilling holes in a beautiful...
That bloke that owns it is a bit fussy, you know.
Yeah, this is an owner that very high exacting standards. Not you, Malcolm. Of course you do. Claire's referring to me. So, nice plain guitar,
yeah,
really.
Yeah, it's pretty. I quite like the colour. It's nice. That.
But it should have a new tremolo bridge piece block in the back. It's too thin and weedy.
Well, it's like that other one you took out, is it?
Yeah. So it needs a big steel. They're only about £25, but I didn't think of getting one in for Malcolm.
Why do you think they manufacture them like that? Because
cost saving.
Well, while you're there.
Yeah, £25 for a Fender brand name. You'd think, but it's it's playing to a tight margins game, isn't it? I suppose.
I've just ordered some similar type of things for my jewellery.
What, string winders?
No, but where you put the wire in to end it rather than knotting it.
Right.
So you
have thing.
You have a screw that you screw down on.
Right.
And they're really. I hope they're as nice looking as they seem on the website. Right, back to it.
Oh, no, you dropped it. Okay. It's quite rare to get a guitar with the nut is in good shape, actually. I'm very pleased to see. A bit easier for me all round. Don't know how I managed to get so much slack on this one. I've done something wrong here, but never mind. I'll have to live with it for now. It'll work. It's just got a bit more than my 1 over and 2 under. Apologies. Right, spare bits of string, cut-offs into the bin. And now we have the thrill of the new tool, the thing that is known as string stretcher. I think it's kind of fairly common sense how it works. Yeah. Is it really? Put that on there and that on there. Okay. Not quite sure where you're supposed to rock it, whether you do it on the ground or just in the fresh air. I suppose it's find out how hard you can do this when you snap a string doing it, which is, I don't really want to do. You get more stretch out of the wound strings. Kind of feels like it's quite good if you run it along the fretboard, actually, pressing it down. It's kind of the same as what I've been doing with my fingers. Just it doesn't really do much else other than saves the fingers the sort of ache of doing it. But that's the same with most tools, isn't it? They just make things a bit easier. For about 12 quid, that's not a bad investment. It's clearly working. Doesn't feel quite as solid and direct as using my fingers to do it, but I'm sure it will save me a lot of pain and misery. Right, let me just tune this up. Crow's going mad out there. So we're tuned up there, but the tremolo is currently locked flat, so it's not going anywhere for the time being, but we'll unlock it in a minute when it's time to set it. Just, I'm noticing this the way this neck is on this body. It's quite tilted off to the so the bass strings are quite near the edge. It's not too critical, but it's not quite centrally placed, whether it's the bridge saddles spacing, but they look pretty good. Push these the other way, try and buy back a little bit more room. Just a bit of faking it really. Alright, anyway, let's get some stretch done. I wonder if I mean, as soon as you put a tool in the way of what you did before with human touch, you sort of lose that sense of what is it doing. Used to be able to feel it before, obviously. Now this is doesn't give me a sense of what's happening to the string, or whether I need to push harder or less hard. Anyway, we'll keep on trying it. Maybe it's about pulling it down, maybe it's not about doing little bends, maybe it's about just running it up and down like this at some speed. Maybe that's the simplest way of doing it, under a bit of pressure. Anyway, let's check that tuning again. Okay. Okay, that's holding its tune alright for the time being. Right, quick pause while I drink my tea, and then we're on to the Galeazzo Fredua method of tremolo setting.